Welcome to In Focus with Ejaz Haider. We revisit the situation in Afghanistan this evening. As violence continues, so does diplomacy to try and find a workable solution to the intra-Afghan talks. Interestingly, Taliban have also undertaken diplomacy. Early this month, there was a Taliban delegation in Moscow meeting Zamir Kabulov, who was the Russian presidential envoy to Afghanistan. Earlier today, a 9-member Taliban delegation met China's State Councillor and Foreign Minister Wang Yi in the northern city of Tianjin. 2 days ago, Wang met with U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Wendy Sherman at the same venue. On 24 July, Wang and Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi met at Chengdu for the third round of China-Pakistan Foreign Ministers' strategic dialogue. This was their second meeting in 10 days after they met in Dushanbe on 14 July. After the Chengdu meeting, the Chinese spokesperson told the media that Pakistan and China had decided to launch joint actions on the Afghan issue. Meanwhile, President Ashraf Ghani's government is under pressure from the political opposition also and the parliament. Yesterday, Khan Agha Rezai, the head of Parliament's Internal Security Commission, accused the Office of National Security Council of incompetence, saying interference by the ONSC in the affairs of the country's security agencies is complicating the war effort on the battlefield. To discuss the issue further, and there are various other aspects to this, and as I thought, the Taliban diplomacy is also with reference to Iran and other capitals. So this is what we're going to discuss this evening, and I'm joined by Zahid Hussain, journalist and author most recently of No Win War, The Paradox of US-Pakistan Relations in Afghanistan's Shadow, Hamdullah Hamdard, who's an Afghan journalist and analyst and based in Kabul, and James Dorsey, an award-winning journalist and currently senior fellow at the S. Rajaratnam School of International Studies at Singapore's Nanyang Technological University. Great to have most of these guests who have appeared on the program previously also back on this. Let me begin with Hamdullah Hamdard here. Hamdullah Hamdard, let's talk about, we all know and we've been talking about this ad nauseum with reference to the Taliban and the Kabul government. But let's talk a little bit about fissures between Ghani's government and the political opposition, and also within Ghani's government.
Well, I believe that within the government, the oppositions have decreased. Before Taliban attacks, there were so many opposition groups, and they were opposing the President Ghani's government. But nowadays, they are also presenting or sharing their proposals for the peace talks with the Taliban, either through Hamid Karzai or directly with the government. And they have been negotiating with President Ghani's government or with the government led by President Ghani. Of course, the situation can get better only if Taliban and if the Afghan government and if the opposition and everyone get together and proceed with the peace talks. Everybody knows, even the international community knows this, that there is no military solutions to the war in Afghanistan, and there has to be a settlement through peace talks. Otherwise, the war will continue, and at the moment, we do not see huge oppositions against the government, and nobody is talking anything, or nobody is opposing the government at the moment. And they all are trying to kind of show that they support the military forces of Afghanistan, the national army, and keep telling to Taliban to stop or decrease the violence they are creating in the provinces, killing innocent people. And even in Qatar province, they killed someone who was a comedian, who was not involved even with the government or even in politics, and nothing. He was just a comedian, and Taliban even killed him just to scare the people. And this is not in the favor of Taliban. This is defaming them.
Okay.
The Afghan government should try to go for the peace talks. Taliban should try to go for the peace talks. The opposition groups can mediate, they can be mediators.
Right. So these are the. So let's move from what ought to be to what is. Now, here's the thing. We all know that Taliban are gaining ground. We also know, and I think you know this, of course, better than I do, that the Taliban have reached out to the political opposition They've reached out to Shah Massoud's brother, his son, and they've reached out to Mohakek through Iran. They're also in contact with Hekmatyar. The former President Hamid Karzai and his affiliates are also in contact with the Taliban. And so there is a clear I would say a policy or a strategy on Taliban's part to isolate Ashraf Ghani. So that's one thing. Secondly, I would like to get some more details with reference to the comedian's assassination, because to the best of my knowledge, the Taliban have not really claimed responsibility for it, unless there is something that I don't know. Thirdly, in a recent interview, the Taliban spokesperson talked about fake videos being circulated and fake pamphlets being given to people in order to defame the Taliban fighters. So I just want to get your sense on the three issues that I've talked about here.
Mr. Haider, you are a very intelligent person. You know this very well, that nobody is going to take responsibility for the irresponsible acts they do. Nobody is going to accept the responsibility for the killings, for the murders they do. Have you ever seen in the world that anybody has accepted that they have murdered someone? Every murderer says that he has not committed that murder, because he just wants to be known as a good...
I don't want to belabor the point. My point is, of course, no murderer would say that he has murdered someone. But that's a completely different situation. We're talking about an insurgent movement that has previously claimed responsibility for attacks very openly. They have not been apologetic about this. But of late, there have been a number of assassinations for which they have not claimed responsibility. As a matter of fact, a couple of times they have said that they are not involved in these murders. And they have constantly been saying, I'm just simply saying that there is another side to the story, and I want to actually understand what that other side of the story is.
Well, according to the information that we have access to, unfortunately, these murders were done by Taliban, and even more than 200 people. They were taken out from their homes in Boldak, because Boldak is under the control of Taliban, and they are responsible for any kind of killings. You know that when a person is killed and the killer is not obvious who has killed him, then the government there, or the people who are governing that area, they are the responsible. This is according to Sharia, according to Islam. We believe in this. And Taliban are responsible for that. Whoever is killed in their area, they are responsible for that. Whoever is killed innocently in the government's area, the government is responsible for that. So we cannot avoid this, and we cannot escape this reality. And in some of the areas,
I get your point. Let me take this to Zahid Hussain. So Zahid Hussain, here's the thing. The Taliban, according to one report, have now consolidated in the Spin Boldak Vesh Mandi area. According to this report, they have also begun collecting taxes from the trucks that come in from Pakistan into Afghanistan and vice versa. Now, here's the thing. I mean, this is without prejudice to what Hamdullah Alamdar is saying. We have, I've had him on my program earlier many times with reference to the unfortunate killings of lots of professional people, journalists, women activists, and the rest of it. So that's a cause of great concern, obviously. But here's the thing. There's a very famous photojournalist from India, Danish, who got caught in the crossfire and was killed, which is most unfortunate. There is a recent, incident in which the local government in the area of Kandahar has actually arrested 4 journalists, and they've said, and the National Directorate of Security have said that we've done this because we don't want people to get killed. So there's a lot of back and forth going on in the area, and people can get killed. So give me your sense of how you view the situation.
Unfortunately, some of the things which are happening in Afghanistan is quite, condemnable. And this kind of war, when it goes on, it's almost a civil war-like situation. You may not call it civil war yet, yet, but there's fighting going on. And in this situation, it seems that even though Taliban leadership has said that they will not attack civilians, they will not take revenge, or even the soldiers who desert their ranks will be pardoned and whatever. But do they have complete control over the organization? Like, for example, when you talk about this Alamdar incident, I will not completely rule out that it could have that local Taliban were involved in murder. I don't have any proof of that. I not evident that, but basically plausibility. What I'm talking about, possibility. And same case is in Kandahar. I've also heard about it, and some people tell me that it was also a revenge to the former police commander of the region who was killed about a few years ago.
Razik.
General Razik. So all those things are happening, and that it happens in this kind of situation. It is not actually, nobody can endorse that, but certainly this is what happened in the situation where the country is in complete anarchy. I think probably what we are seeing actually, despite the fact that Taliban have been able to get control or extend their influence in a large part of or large sort of Afghanistan. But overall, actually, if you see the situation in Afghanistan, it seems that the situation is still not under control of anyone. It's one thing actually to take over certain areas. For example, it is said that now Taliban control almost more than 50% of the area. But when we talk about controlling an area, we are not very sure whether they have the complete control over the administration. Can they run the administration? All those questions come to mind. And I think probably Taliban's strategy seems very clear at this point of time. They have taken control of most of the rural areas. They have their most spectacular achievement has been in the northern Afghanistan, where they did not have that kind of support base as they have in the Pashtun belt, but they have extended. But one thing is very clear: they have not yet taken over major towns or cities in Afghanistan. Right. Leave aside Kabul. We've talked about Kabul. So all the things is that there's also they understand the limitation. They actually how many troops they have, how many people do they have to control those areas. It's taken actually over as one thing, but controlling cities and towns will be very, very difficult for anyone.
Absolutely. I totally agree. As a matter of fact, you recall, in fact, I think we discussed this in a previous program with reference to the Afghan National Security Forces people leaving their posts in Badakhshan, and the Taliban didn't even have the manpower to actually, place people there to man the area. But let me pull in James Dorsey. James, thank you. We've been on the program after a long time. So let's begin with getting your overview of the situation with reference to the U.S. decision, the initial decision, and then the Biden administration's decision for a precipitous withdrawal without really waiting for or pushing for, more strongly, for an intra-Afghan deal.
Let's go back to basics.
Okay.
Fact of the matter is that the U.S. military presence most recently in Afghanistan really was a holding operation for the government of Ashraf Ghani. It was not fundamentally turning things around on the ground, and it was not going to be able to ultimately prevent at least many of the advances that the Taliban have made. I think that's number one. Number two is that what the Taliban are doing in terms of reaching out to both domestically various parties, as well as Afghanistan's neighbors. Keep in mind that of the 10 major border posts of Afghanistan, 7 are in hands of the Taliban. It makes perfect sense for them to reach out to domestic and foreign parties, irrespective of what their ultimate goal is. So, with other words, whether or not the military advances that they are making are part of an effort to actually take Kabul and take over government, or whether this is trying to increase their leverage in future negotiations with the government.
Right. So, based on this, how do you? What is the likely prognosis now? When it comes to talking to the other Afghan stakeholders, it's very interesting that the Taliban have, on more than one occasion, said that ultimately they're going to talk. But they have also said, on one occasion, they have said more overtly that Ghani has to leave. On other occasions, they have been a little more ambiguous in the sense that they have said that, we're going to talk and resolve this through talks with other stakeholders. So when they say with other stakeholders, one is not sure whether that is Ghani and his coterie, or whether that includes Ghani and his coterie.
Well, I think, first of all, I do not know what the integrity of what the Taliban says, what that integrity is. So do they really want a negotiated solution? And even if they say, do they want a negotiated solution, what does that mean? Does that mean that they are willing to have a give and take process in which all sides make concessions? Or are they talking about a negotiated process in which they have the upper hand because of the military advances that they have made? So we don't really know what the integrity of that of those statements are. To be fair, I don't know that we really know that for the Ashraf Ghani government, which is on the defensive and very worried. I would imagine that various interlocutors with whom certainly domestically, with whom the Taliban are speaking, are seeking to, one, secure their own interests, perhaps even their own security, and much of their position will depend on what they bring to the table. With other words, I don't think that the Taliban, or for that matter, most of the Taliban's interlocutors that they're reaching out to, want an armed conflict that would go beyond the government of Ashraf Ghani. So, the parameters of all of this are really very unclear, at least to me.
Right. So let's ask Zahid Hussain before I go to Hamdullah Hamdard. So Zahid Hussain, a few things are, or let me just say that one common denominator as far as the regional and extra-regional countries are concerned is that there should not be a civil war in Afghanistan, and there should not be a spillover of refugees into Pakistan, partly into Iran, perhaps also into Tajikistan and Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan, and also that there is no spillover of terrorism into these countries. And I think that is where, despite different ideologies and everything, everyone seems to be on that same page with reference to what is not desirable, and therefore why something which is desirable should happen. Now, given that, and given the fact that Taliban have, actually, perhaps surprisingly, perhaps not so unsurprisingly, have been pretty savvy in their diplomacy. I mean, they assured the Russians in Moscow that they would not allow their soil to be used for any kind of mischief, in other territories. They've said the same to Wang, when they met him earlier today. So it seems to me that they feel that in order for them to retain the legitimacy that they have acquired up until now and not lose it, that they're probably playing a more sophisticated game.
Well, as you said it, the Taliban have been very savvy in their diplomatic effort. We all thought that they do not know that. The Taliban, over the years, we have seen they have got or acquired that international legitimacy as a major political force in Afghanistan's conflict and major side in the Afghan conflict. That is their legitimacy. They have not been actually recognized as a government in waiting. They have not been. So that's a difference between the two. And other thing is that, yes, Taliban have been visiting different capitals. And obviously, if all the surrounding countries and neighboring countries want to develop a good relations with Taliban, because they understand that fact that they are going to be a part or major part of the future political setup, whatever it would be. And each one of these countries, you have just mentioned Iran, China, Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and other countries, all they have certain interest and stake in Afghanistan's peace. And so this is their concern is, yes, actually the Taliban should become the part of mainstream politics. They should be part of the power structure, future power structure. But all of them have made very clear to Taliban that any military takeover of Kabul will not be acceptable. And also the other thing is that you have seen that Quad statement, which Pakistan is also a part of it, which include the United States, Afghanistan, China and Pakistan, not Afghanistan. So basically, they have also categorically have conveyed this message. Just look, actually, we respect you. We actually accept you as a force. But actually, there has to be a political settlement of Afghanistan's crisis. The second thing is that Taliban have been very shrewd in that. They have not come out openly about what do they really mean by inclusive system of the government. They talk about inclusive, they talk about the pluralistic system of the government, but what do they really mean is not very clear. Inclusive, whether they want actually inclusive means sitting with the different Afghan groups and the Afghan government and actually reach an agreement with them, or what they do mean by inclusive government is to negotiate separate deal with various warlords. So it's not very clear yet.
That's a very important point. Let me take this to Hamdard. So, Hamdullah Hamdard, it's very clear that the regional countries, each one of them, has a stake in Afghanistan's peace, and therefore they are on the same page. Now, the rest of it is within Afghanistan in terms of how the Afghans can come together. And you might recall that after the Taliban-US deal, we talked about the intra-Afghan dialogue, and there was a general consensus that this second phase is likely to be tougher. And it has proved to be tougher. So what do you suggest as an Afghan, and also, but additionally, not just as an Afghan, but also as an analyst, let's move away from what we desire. But I want you to tell us and our viewers what is possible.
Well, the truth in Afghanistan is that the Afghan nation wants a republic system in Afghanistan. The republic has to prevail, whether Taliban comes or whether Ashraf Ghani continues or whether someone else becomes the president. This war has to stop. Yesterday, for example, few days back, Taliban captured some districts. Yesterday, the government announced that the government has retaken more than 20 districts from Taliban. If this war continues, it is only destroying the life of the people. It is only making the lives of the people worse and worse day by day. And only the public or the common people are suffering from this. Taliban in the government, they are fighting, of course. They might be even enjoying the fight or the war. But the common people, the ordinary people, the farmers, the transport workers, the taxi drivers, the bus drivers, they are all suffering. The passengers, nobody is safe. Everybody is suffering from this. And the suggestion that I have to both government, the Taliban, the international community, to our neighboring countries and everyone, stop interference in internal affairs of Afghanistan, work for the peace talks of Afghanistan. Let's bring this peace together so that everybody can feel proud of having peace or bringing peace or maintaining peace in Afghanistan. Pakistan should be proud of bringing peace in Afghanistan. Iran should feel proud of it. India should feel proud of it. Russia should feel proud of it. The international community, the Islamic country, the Arab world, and everybody should participate in bringing peace into Afghanistan. The war is in the favor of no one. I've said this many times, and I'm going to say it again and again. I emphasize on this as an Afghan. The war is in the favor of no one. Killing Afghans is in the favor of no one. Supporting the terrorism in Afghanistan is in the favor of no one. If any country support the terrorism in Afghanistan, one day they will cry because of their own terrorist activities in their own terrorist groups. So let's stop supporting terrorist groups in Afghanistan. Let's work for a peaceful, a strong, a long-term government in Afghanistan. Let's work together for peace.
Right. I think that there's consensus on this point that, as I said earlier also, and all the governments have been saying this, it's not just one particular government or another particular government, but all the regional and extra-regional countries have talked about the fact that peace in Afghanistan is an absolute must, not just for Afghanistan, but also for the stability of the region. But thank you so much. That was Hamdullah Hamdard speaking with us. Before I wrap up very quickly, because I'm running out of time for this segment, perhaps a couple of minutes each, starting with James Dorsey. James, do you think, and I know that I'm kind of asking you to speculate here, but given your very long experience as a journalist, as an analyst, there is an entire generation since 2000, 2001 in Afghanistan that is, digital or modern generation, shall I say. And even if the Taliban have the upper hand, they come to power, and I'm assuming this for the sake of the argument, they would need these people to be part of that government. So it seems to me that the idea that perhaps they're going to, or they already are killing these people seems a bit stretched. I don't know. I mean, I really don't have an answer to that.
Well, let me say two things. First of all, going back to 2001, I think the United States was in a bind, frankly. I remember very clearly being opposed to a military intervention by the United States in Afghanistan, but feeling once it became known, and that was about 3 weeks into the U.S. intervention itself, that the United States had actually been negotiating with the Taliban and with the Afghans for a period of 3 years, meeting in New York, in Geneva, in Paris, in London, about a extradition of Osama bin Laden. In many ways, they had no choice after 9/11. Now, having said that, I think what the war in Afghanistan proves, as have other wars, and presumably so will future wars, winning a war militarily does not mean you've won the war. It's the reconstruction, the nation building, exactly those things that the United States always said it was not going to get engaged in, and it's paying a price for that. Which leads me to my second point, which is clearly everybody, who's going to tell you we're against peace in Afghanistan, or for that matter, anywhere else? The fact of the matter is you only agree to a peace and the concessions that would be involved in that if the price of continuing the war is higher and becomes too high.
Absolutely.
And so I think that you've seen the willingness to negotiate with the United States on the part of the Taliban. Of course, you're going to get the foreign forces out. Yeah. A major victory and a major, a major strengthening of, or in any case, potential increase of opportunities for the Taliban. Finally, I wanted, you mentioned that the common interest on the part of Afghanistan's neighbors is the issue of ensuring that you don't get a spread of political violence. And I think that goes back to my first point with regard to the United States. That's all good. But again, ensuring that you get a reduction of political violence and terrorism is going to entail creating a situation in Afghanistan in which the social and economic goods are delivered. And I don't see that happening from any government at this point, either, whether that's the Taliban or the Ashraf Ghani government. And I think that's where one of the cores of the problem is.
Absolutely. Very important points. Thank you so much. That was James Dorsey speaking with us. Zaid Hussain, very quickly, I just got a minute or so. Do you think that, this generation that has come up, the Taliban are cognizant of the fact that, these are the people that they're going to need to run a government?
Well, actually, just that two things are very, very clear. I think from clear messages to Taliban is one, actually, nobody will accept the restoration of Islamic Emirates. It means old order, like Taliban ruled by what we call like Mullah Omar's government. Nobody would like that. The second thing is that to run the government, even if they take over militarily, it will not be possible to run the government without the international support and without the international legitimacy. We all know what the situation in Afghanistan at this point.
That's a point that James was also making.
Yeah, 90% of Afghanistan budget comes from foreign donation.
Correct.
So it will not change overnight, actually, if Taliban take over. And how are they going to mobilize the finances? So the thing is that it's not just taking military control, but also run a system. So that is the biggest challenge for any, like, for example, it is a challenge for running government or anybody else in Afghanistan, or basically for Taliban. Exactly same thing. So basically it's a very, the situation is no more the 1990s situation. The world has changed, Afghanistan has changed, and they have to take in cognizance this new reality on the ground.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Zaid Hussain speaking with us. We shall take a short break and return to discuss rising COVID-19 cases in Pakistan. Stay with us. Welcome back to In Focus. Pakistan is facing another potential wave of COVID-19, this time overwhelmingly of the Delta variant, formerly known as the Indian variant. Labs are reporting that 80 to 90% new cases show Delta variant. NCOC, as well as President Arif Alvi, have sounded alarm bells asking people to get vaccinated and also follow non-vaccine safety protocols. To discuss this further, I am joined by Javed Khan, a noted pulmonologist at Pakistan Kidney and Liver Institute in Lahore. And I will shortly be joined by Dr. Samia Altaf also. Dr. Khan, let's talk about this Delta variant. We know that it is very transmissible in terms of its contagious impact, but we also are probably lucky that it's not more virulent than the original COVID-19 virus and also the UK and the South African variants. So what are we looking at? We're essentially looking at more hospitalization, more patient load. What exactly is the issue here?
As you said rightly, it is much more transmissible. It's almost, we had the Alpha variant, which was 50% more transmissible than the original variant. And this one, Delta, is 50% more than the Alpha variant. So that means we're talking about 100% to 200% more transmissible. In addition, the virus load is much higher in Delta virus than the original variant. So that's why it is more transmissible as well. We know from our experience for the last 18 months and so that out of all those 100 cases, there are almost 5 to 10% may end up in hospital. So again, even if you take the same severity or same virulence as the original virus, the number of people who will be infected and a greater proportion will end up in hospitals. Main objective for all these campaign was to stop people going to hospital and getting a severe disease. So absolutely, even if there are some reports that it is more virulent and there are more hospitalization in this virus than the original variant. So I don't think we can just take it lightly in that way, that, okay, fine, it's more transmissible, but at least it's not more virulent, because the number of cases which are going to hospital proportionately will be much, much higher than the original variant.
Absolutely, and that's going to put a lot of load on hospitals and the healthcare system. But Dr. Khan, there's another good news, shall I say, that 90% of those who are testing positive with the Delta variant are people that have not been vaccinated. So while there are cases of people who are vaccinated getting this Delta variant, the majority of cases are of patients who have not been vaccinated.
Absolutely. This is very encouraging news, and also make a very strong case for vaccination. For example, in America, all cases who are being admitted are one who are not vaccinated. All the cases admitted to Britain as well, they are majority, 99%, all Delta virus, but again, the one who were not vaccinated. So I think here is a very strong case one can make, that if you get full vaccination, 2 doses of vaccination, your protection level goes much, much higher than the one who are not vaccinated. So there are some studies as well, which has reported, I think generally if you're vaccinated and the chances of getting infection, not the severe disease, it's 0.04%. So it's a very encouraging data to encourage the people to get the vaccination.
Right. So just to put in perspective, Mr. Asad Umar, who also heads the NCOC and was the Minister for Planning, Development and Special Initiatives, he tweeted, he said, total vaccinations carried out so far now exceed 25 million. Total number of people vaccinated has now crossed 20 million, and further acceleration being planned for August. And he basically talks about the fact that by end of August, that's next month, all major cities to have at least 40% of eligible population vaccinated. So, Dr. Khan, so 40% of population vaccinated, and we also need to bring in the numbers of people who have been infected and who have recovered. So they also belong in that category of, the safe category. So since we keep talking about herd immunity and the rest of it, so what percentage does one need through vaccinations and through infections and recovery to reach that level?
Well, from the past experience, we are talking about 60 to 70% of the people when they get infected are vaccinated, you can achieve that herd immunity. But we are still way long off going to that level. If we could get around 40% in 5 major cities in Punjab and 70% in Rawalpindi area, as is the target, I think probably we may be reasonably safe, that where the pressure on the healthcare system may not be that much. Because remember, vaccination does not prevent from infection. People may still get infected. They may have a mild disease, but they are very likelihood that they will not get the severe disease where they need to go to hospital. And the major, the target for healthcare facility is that you reduce the burden on healthcare system. That surely may be achieved when you go to this 40% vaccination, because what some reports suggest from the blood testing, looking at the antibody testing from different laboratories, there may be 25 to 30% people are already infected with coronavirus in Pakistan. So if you bring that 20% with this 40%, we may be closer to achieving that target of 60% herd immunity.
All right. One final question before we wrap up. How long will we keep getting vaccinated against this virus? 2 years, 3 years, 4 years before we begin to sort of treat it like we treat flu?
If globally people are infected, then the virus will not have anybody to infect. So that's where you will see we can have achieved the immunity. There is quite a disparity between countries. The number of people who are getting vaccination or who get infection. Until then, that is done with, I think we still will be at risk of getting the coronavirus. Now you see the Africa is still a very target. You may see, as you know, many other countries now infected, Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Iran is getting into another virus. I think we still have not plateaued. We have not reached at a stage.
Right, so basically what you're saying is that that happens, we'll continue to every year get vaccinated in order to remain safe from this virus. Thank you so much. That was Dr. Javed Khan speaking with us. As I said earlier, I'm now joined by Dr. Samia Altaf, physician and public health specialist currently associated with the Lahore University of Management Sciences. Dr. Altaf, thank you for being on the program as always. So now the Delta variant, the possibility of another wave, the NCOC has raised a red flag, as is the President of Pakistan. Asad Umar has said that by end August we're going to vaccinate 40% of the people in all major cities. So what is the prognosis? Are we looking at another wave, or will we be able to contain this one?
Ijaz, you and I have been talking about it for many weeks now, and it seems like we are having the same conversation over and over again. It's from all records that I see, about 2% of the population is vaccinated now. So that leaves a lot of people who are vulnerable and need to be vaccinated. The government's proclamation that we will vaccinate a certain number by end of August is fine as a proclamation, but to me, it doesn't seem like it is going to get done because there's no actions that are different from what has happened before. So it does not inspire much confidence in me. And the issue still remains that, yes, there will be a fourth wave or another wave of this infection. And there will continue to be waves of the infection till we reach herd immunity, either by people getting infected naturally or by vaccination. And so we have to up our game of vaccinating people, and we have to up our game of the preventive public health interventions that are the gold standard of prevention, like distancing and masking and all of those protocols. And it looks like we are talking about that, but we are not being able to translate that conversation into effective public health interventions and strategies. So I am, it seems like we just muddle through, hoping that, we kind of remain safe. So
right. Thank you, as always. That was Dr. Samia Altaf speaking with us. This is all from InFocus this week. We shall see you next Monday at the same time. Keep following our latest updates on social media at indus.news. Good night and goodbye.